Assalamualaikum, welcome to a brand new video. In today's video, I'd like to share with you this book, a very important book if you are interested in manuscript studies. If you are interested in textual criticism, this will be a great resource for you. This is more focused on Latin manuscripts, but nevertheless, it will give you the foundation that you need in later endeavor of yours, should you decide to actually learn textual criticism, so on and so forth. And so this book is really good for self-study because it has pictures, so on and so forth. And so if you are interested in textual criticism of the New Testament, you have to focus on manuscript studies. Our early manuscripts were made up of papyrus basically, and later on they're made up of vellum, right? And so early papyri were being used, for example, like the papyri manuscript P46, P52, P45, P66. They're all written on papyrus manuscripts. And then much later on, for example, if we get to Codex Vaticanus and so forth, as you can see here, this is actually vellum, right? And this is how vellum are being prepared. Vellum are basically more referred to like manuscripts made up of gold. And so this book actually show you how vellum is actually being prepared. But there are videos on YouTube that you can watch that will give you a better illustration, a better example, so on and so forth. And so in this example, you can see here, whenever there's actually a hole in the vellum, which is caused by animal bites and so forth, and so the skin that has been brought from the slaughterhouse to the parchment maker already contains holes. So what scribes will do is that they will write around the hole, or they will write the text around the hole. They use reed pens made out of reed, and later on they use bamboo, so on and so forth, right? And so they use a lot of materials to write. For manuscripts that were damaged, scribes would actually repair them by stitching vellum, right? They will stitch the manuscripts, so on and so forth. And this is actually how the vellum are being prepared, right? The process of thinning the vellum, so on and so forth. Again, there are videos on YouTube that will actually teach you or show you actually how it's been made. Because vellum is actually animal skin, right? So it is not always possible to get like a square shape or rectangular shape, so on and so forth, kind of like our A4 size paper today. And so some manuscripts, you find that scribes will still continue to write on it, so they write the text accordingly, right? So this is probably manuscripts that has been torn off or towards the side of the height, so on and so forth. And scribes also repair manuscripts. For example, whenever there's a hole, right, they will repair the manuscript, right? So note the visible outline of the strip of transparent tissue that repairs the area in which the two holes occur. So for example here as well as here. And so you can see here the writing scribes actually wrote on the holes that have been repaired. Sometimes they actually just leave it like that, they do not repair, and so they write around the holes. Right. And for example, some of them actually decorated using different colors and so forth, right, just to make it nice. Again, another example of this. So how they actually, for example, you see these manuscripts, right, they're actually written quite perfectly in lines and so forth, right? For example, here and here, like you can see there's actually a pencil liner underneath, right? And so what scribes would do is that okay, you can see here these dots, right? That is actually where they would measure the lines. Some would actually use strings, right? And some will actually use this as a reference to draw the lines and so forth. Normally these will get cut off actually, but for these manuscripts it has not been cut off. And scribes also, for 3-column manuscripts like Codex Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, 4 columns, they actually draw this, and the middle line is actually where they use, you know, like the drop caps in modern the way us modern do it. Again, another illustration. So this book is really fantastic. It gives you an explanation. It also has pictures, right? This is drop caps, for example. Now, text and decoration. Medieval manuscripts are being heavily decorated, right? For example, you have all these images. These are actually drawn on vellum. They actually use oak gall ink, a species of oak tree, like the gall that grew on the oak tree. And for example, this is it, oak gall here. Right. And so there's actually a recipe on how you can actually make ink, right? And this is the recipe, right? So for example, to make good ink, take 3 ounces of oak galls, grind them a little, take 2 phials of wine, put the galls in the wine and simmer until reduced by 1/3 or half, right? So on and so forth. You can see here some manuscripts have their titles written vertically, right? Some, for example, you have this, right, and another decoration here, so on and so forth. This is an incomplete manuscript. This was supposed to be colored, but probably the scribes forgot about it, or he probably died before, you know, being able to decorate his manuscript fully. And this is something interesting also, an incomplete manuscript. In terms of its decoration, you can still see that there are figures that have not yet been colored. And so this is something that is interesting, this portion here. The labor of the scribe is the refreshment of the reader. The former weakens the body, the latter profits the mind. Whoever you may be, therefore, who profit by this work, do not forget the laboring one who made it, so that God, thus invoked, will overlook your sins. Amen. Because one who does not know how to write thinks it no labor. I will describe it for you if you want to know how great is the burden of writing it, meaning writing the manuscript. It mists the eyes, it curves the back, it breaks the belly and the ribs, it fills the kidneys with pain and the body with all kinds of suffering. Therefore, turn the pages slowly, reader, and keep your fingers well away from the pages. For just as a hailstorm ruins the fecundity of the soil, so the sloppy reader destroys both the book and the writing. For as the last pot is sweet to the sailor, so the last line to the scribe. Right? And so this is very interesting. It talks about the scribe who actually wrote manuscript, but readers actually destroy manuscript by getting their hands over the text, so on and so forth, right? Which is why a lot of libraries actually made you wear glove if you want to look and handle like manuscripts. And so again, these are all the different manuscripts, right? One interesting thing is that for me, I'm always fascinated by their drop caps. Really decorative ideas. And if it wasn't for their drop caps, right, our computer today, our Microsoft Word today, will not have the function drop caps, right? So these are all taken from old medieval ancient manuscripts, right? For example, you have like a full page drop caps here, and also decoration, so on and so forth, right? Now, this book actually talks about a lot of things, how scribes actually correct their mistakes, right? Types of error and methods of correction. There are different ways as to how scribes actually would correct a text. Let me just go back to a manuscript here if I can find it, just to show you. Okay, so for example, if I made a mistake here, right, so scribes would actually use pumice to erase it down. Some, if it's on papyrus, they would use water, right, and they would also use some stones actually to erase it down. On vellum is much more it is much more, I would say, lenient, or much more forgiving actually, right? Because depending on the thickness of the vellum, you can always scrape off the top part. And also, before scribes actually prepare the writing process, so that the ink would actually sink into the vellum and they would not actually remain on the surface of the vellum, scribes actually use pumice, right, to scrape down the skin so that the ink will actually be absorbed, right. They would also use gall inks, right, and yeah, so kind of like the modern day inks that absorb into your skin, right? Not inks that if you own a printer, you know there's a difference between the dye ink as well as like a non-dye ink, right? Dye ink actually sink into it, and a non-dye ink actually stay on the surface of the paper, which is why non-dye ink actually fades, right? If it's exposed under the light condition, it actually fades. And so scribes, they will erase, and if, for example, in early papyri manuscripts, you'll find that whenever scribes made a mistake, right, for example, they leave an entire phrase or an entire line, if they leave a few words, they actually would write on top of it, right? But if they left an entire passage or what, you can find that sometimes they write in the marginal notes, or sometimes they actually write at the bottom here, right? And so there are a lot of things that this book actually teaches you. This is published by Cornell University Press, by the way, one of the top universities in the world. And so, like, scribes do annotate their manuscripts, right? They have annotations, so on and so forth. And so all this actually comes from ancient manuscripts, right? For example, you have this side notes here, your annotations, and so forth. And the reason why we have these functions in our Microsoft Word or Pages is because scribes in the past actually did it, right? So a lot of great images and illustrations, so on and so forth. All these were written on vellum. Now, to write a book like this in the past, it is the same price as like buying a Ferrari today, because one goat, for example, can probably make like 8 folios or 8 leaves of less than an A4 page, right? And it is common that a folio actually contains like 8 pages or 8 leaves, and so forth, right? 8 to 12 leaves, even 10, so on and so forth. So this is how it would be. So in order to make a manuscript like this, to copy the entire Latin Bible, like this, the Vulgate or whatever it is, it costs hundreds and thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in modern currency. It is very, very, very expensive. And so you can see here that there's a lot of spaces here in this manuscript, and you start to find that in medieval manuscripts that scribes actually try to make use of all the pages, all the spaces, all the pages, so that they can actually save money. But for manuscripts that have a lot of space here and there, basically it is much more expensive to make. So all these spaces, so these manuscripts, especially the for example, like the quality of the vellum, like how fine it is, right? And so you cannot see any grain, hair grain, right? They all have been removed using the lunellum, which is the saw that they use in the preparation. Let's see if I can find a lunellum here. They have an image of lunellum, if I'm not mistaken. Probably they don't. So basically lunellum is like this. Yes, this material, you can see it, right? Lunellum, they were used to scrape off the hairs and so forth, right? The lunellum. Yeah, so basically that's it, actually, the first portion of the book. The second portion of the book is actually how do you know do book bindings and so forth, right? Which actually, if you are interested, you can learn, but it doesn't affect so much on textual criticism, right? Although depending on the binding, you can also tell the year in which the manuscript is prepared, right? And also in the spine of the book, sometimes they use parchments that is much earlier, scrap parchment according to them, but scholars have discovered that the binding, the materials that or the vellum that's used for binding contains reading or text from an early manuscript that have actually been lost to us, right? And so this is also common that scribes recycle vellum from the past to use as a binding, to use as the binders, actually. It kind of similar as to modern day, how journals, antique journals, are being bounded. It is not like modern day heavily published book whereby they use glue, right, to glue the pages. In the past, they don't use glue; they use, they sew the page, right? For example, each folio contains 8 to 10 leaves that have been sewn, right, and then attached together with many folios and so forth to produce a book. The covers that they use can also be used to find out the dating of the manuscripts. Some manuscripts contains all these dates, right, and pictures. There's a lot of pictures here. And so, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, probably the first part of this book will be of interest for you if you want to know about textual criticism or paleography. The second portion of the book is actually about reading the manuscripts, which is not so much of our interest here because this is Latin manuscript, right? We are interested in the Greek manuscript, although Latin manuscript is also an early manuscript, right? Doesn't mean Latin is the language of the church, and a lot of Latin Bibles are being produced in after the advent of Islam, right? Way before the before the modern period, like closer to the modern period, 10th century, 11th century, so on and so forth. But some manuscripts, for example, Jerome's Vulgate, they're actually being copied from the Old Latin, and also from early manuscripts that have been copied that the Old Latin actually used, right? Which is the Greek. And so, yeah, just because a manuscript is in Latin, we can't discard it completely, because they might contain a translation of a very early reading, right? And so, ladies and gentlemen, Introduction to Manuscript Studies. This is a great book if you want to learn about paleography, textual criticism, so on and so forth. So I thought I'd make this video to show you that these things actually exist. Alright, till next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.